Well, here we are. This is show 7, A Variety of Spirit Minds, and we're doing Creation 1-9. Dan, give us a quick look ahead at what we're doing in this show.
The essence was quickened by a ripple from the mind of God, and creative thought was projected. This generated power, which produced light, and this formed a substance like unto a mist of invisible dust.
This is deep. This is going to be deep. So Let's just jump into the deep end of the pool. I'm going to start by reading Creation 1:9. The essence was quickened by a ripple from the mind of God, and a creative thought was projected. This generated power, which produced light, and this formed a substance like unto a mist of invisible dust. It divided into two forms of energy through being impregnated with the Spirit of God and quickening the chaos of the void within the universal womb, became spun out into whirlpools of substance. From this activity, as sparks from a fire, came an infinite variety of spirit minds, each having creative powers within itself. For me, this passage is really powerful because on one hand, we have the Spirit of God, and the other, we have the quickening chaos of the void within the universal womb. This is big. This is big stuff. So let's break it down, starting with Creation 1:9-1. The essence was quickened by a ripple from the mind of God, and a creative thought was projected.
Marshall, this verse is really special to you, and I'd really like to hear your comments on it. Would you mind giving us some your opinion on this particular verse?
Well, I love the word ripple. It reminds me of tossing a pebble into a pond and watching the ripples going out and connecting with other things. And there is this profound sense of connection. What I see is that our manifestations, as we've discussed before, are really learning experiences, and they're very important. And so if we look at a ripple of what we're learning, it comes down to what's the pebble in the pond? That's freedom. It's the reason why so many throughout history, my gosh, how many of us have laid down our lives for freedom? It's powerful. And freedom is important. Why do we do this? Why do we sacrifice ourselves? Because I believe God has, programmed us, if you will, that freedom is the foundation of free will. Without freedom, you cannot experience free will. And free will is the energizing force of intention. Through intention, universes are created. And so it explains to me why we always seek to be free, so that we can experience our own free will and to hone it and perfect it, so that we're not using our free will to hurt others, but to be in service to others, to make this a better world than we found it. And that as we evolve as spirit entities, we become more powerful. And, mind of God, being able to, through intention, project an outcome, those are universes. And those universes exist within a multiverse. I tend to think of God as a magnum of champagne that's inexhaustible. And it's warm, and you pop the cork, and you have foam coming out. And the foam consists of many bubbles. Each of those bubbles is a universe in its own right, with its own physical laws. And so there is this perpetual genesis where God is continually creating universes And we are, through freedom, learning how to exercise our free will intelligently and compassionately and with love so that we can join God in this ripple of intention that creates wonderful things. That's my take on it.
That's a deep one. I like that. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. And next, let's go to Creation 192. This generated power which produced light, and this formed a substance like unto a mist of invisible dust.
In one of our earlier shows on the Kolbrin, we discussed the meaning of the word light as used in the body of God. Said that it is not simply a light source, it is an energy source by which God carries out his direction. That's what this verse is saying, that light is a power, and it has a form likened unto a mist of invisible dust. This is known as the universal womb of creation, as referenced in Creation 1, 8, and 3. The invisible dust is what science calls ether, and is the living energy that all material things are made of.
Here is where this stereoscopic fusion between science and spirituality really nets us something significant and meaty. And so I really, really love your interpretation of Creation 192. Let's move ahead now to Creation 193. It divided into two forms of energy through being impregnated with the Spirit of God and quickening the chaos of the void within the universal womb, became spun out into whirlpools of substance.
The concept of two forms of energy is expounded on at great length in the Zohar, a voluminous work compiled by Rab Shimon on the wisdom of the sages throughout humanity. It teaches that God divided the energy set aside for material creation into two parts. One part was the spiritual intelligence that was to manifest as personalities. The other was the ether from which the matter was to be formed. So they were two ends of spectrums of energy. In this verse, we see both of these types of energy manifesting. Impregnated with the Spirit of God is the spiritual intelligence to manifest as personalities, and the ether, which is described as the chaos of the void within the universal womb, is also described. The latter became matter, what some would call the Big Bang, and spun out into whirlpools of substance. The former turned into personalities like you and I.
It really does say that creation is not just a material process, but it's both material and spiritual. Is that what you see here?
I do see that, yes.
I agree completely. And now let's go on to Creation 194. From this activity, as sparks from a fire, came an infinite variety of spirit minds, each having creative powers within itself.
Here we see the personalities being created in infinite variety that we were just talking about. In the Urantia, a self-professed angelic compilation of papers written to those on earth, it is taught that no personality that the Infinite Father oversees, loves, and develops is duplicated by any other personality in any universe, in any superverse, in any of the circles of eternity. We are totally unique in our personality. That's a pretty big thought. That means there's a lot of different personalities out there, an infinite variety of expression of God. It is very important to know that these personalities have creative powers of their own, just like our Creator. These latent powers in humans are still present, but unused and very weak at this time in most people. much like a muscle that is atrophied from lack of use. But for
Like a
those
brain, like a brain.
like a brain,
Sorry for the interruption.
that's okay. However, for those who awaken from this illusion to the reality of the spirit world that we've been talking about, where God exists, these powers are still intact.
As I reviewed this verse, all right, what came to my mind is the concept of doppelgangers. That there are other Earths, if you will, that exist in other galaxies or in other universes or another aspect of the multiverse. And a doppelganger could be very much like us in many ways, but in other ways not. But I'm wrestling with whether or not I buy into the idea of doppelgangers. What about you?
I think I answer that question at another time, but I will give you a preview.
Okay.
I believe that we exist as multiple parts in multiple universes simultaneously,
Mm-hmm.
and that our consciousness requires this existence in multiple. Let's just take spirit and body. There's two of them right there, okay?
Right.
And there are probably more, and most wisdom texts do say that there are perhaps up to 7 different universes that we exist in at any moment of time to create our incarnation as we experience it here. So a doppelganger could be perhaps a misinterpretation of that truth, if we want to establish it as a truth, of living in multiple universes simultaneously to create incarnation, or even spiritual consciousness, because spirit entities also exist multidimensionally.
Well, still out to lunch on doppelgangers. I'm still wrestling with that, but I have one immediate conclusion. A good doppelganger always picks up the check.
Ooh, I like that.
All right, with that in mind, let's jump into our God question. If you have just begun watching this series with this program, please go back and watch the first show, because there we really explain a lot of important information about the God questions that appear at the end of every part in this 10-part series. And we have for this one a God question that Dan has prepared. Dan, share that with us.
God, how must we use the creative powers you've placed within us, and to what end?
That really gets to the heart of why we're all here, doesn't it?
It does.
All right. Well, I did a reading on the God question from previous show 6.
God, what is your greatest desire for humanity as we journey along the road to completion?
Growth as an evolved and sentient species is part of I Am and creation, intended to serve this purpose. Physical forms disappear and reappear. They are regenerated with opportunities for evolution when benign worlds present themselves. Humanity is a proven form. Recurrence, not extinction, is the fate of proven species.
I have to admit, Dan, there was some surprising information in this reading. What about you?
I am surprised too. It does confirm some things you and I have been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really I like recurrence, not extinction, is the fate of a proven species. That's our body, though. But the
That's right.
spirit here is being regenerated in every incarnation with opportunities for evolution. And so I appreciate that opportunity every time. And I want to try to seize that moment and evolve as much as I can. Of course, I have no memory of past incarnations. That's part of incarnation.
But it does make you wonder if in previous incarnations you were in another galaxy in the universe and another completely different species.
I have to wonder. And there are feelings of being places that are not here and being able to do things that I currently am limited to not be able to do in this body. So I have those premonitions, that feeling that I have done these things before, but this cloak of forgetfulness that we wear during our incarnation really keeps me from seeing beyond that. Perhaps someday I will meet someone who can help me pierce through that veil.
Yeah, it could be an evolutionary threshold issue. At some point we evolve to where we can do that. And perhaps now there's that cloak that's not to force ignorance, but to protect us, for the same reason that, Moses couldn't look in the face of God.
Very possible. It could be to protect us. It could be that we could not learn as much if we could see our past. I think a very good picture of that is a text called The Hymn of the Pearl. It's a good story if no one's ever read it. It's an excellent story.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Where would we find The Hymn of the Pearl?
It's available online under archives.org, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
It's also available in text, print form. So it's free. You don't have to pay for it. That's a lot easier just to get it online. It's probably a 15 to 20 minute read for someone, but it's an excellent story about an analogy of us trying to find that next step that you're referring to in recognizing who we are, having a birth of consciousness spiritually, and then evolving to the next step.
Absolutely. Well, our next show 8, is going to focus on creation 110 and 111, and it's titled The Universal Womb, which I think is very appropriate to the conversation. Give us a look ahead.
God is going to speak his very first words, creating the everlasting law in harmonious rhythm and establishing the eternal spheres within the universal womb.
Wow, that's deep. That's deep.
A lot said there.
Yeah, typical Kolbrin. Very few words. Huge concepts. Yeah. That's why I love it. All right, well, I'll see you for show 8, and we'll get a little further into this concept of the universal womb.
I'll see you there.
You got it.